actually going to start today with 2 blocks or something of that nature. So if you have at least one, that will be great. If you have 2 things that you could put between your hands, we're going to be having one between our hands at one point and one between our shins. So play around with what you could use for that for a moment and maybe grab that. If you have things already, then just take your seat. Bring those sitting bones back and apart. Feel that super wide and heavy pelvic floor. Feel the hips heavy on your blanket block floor. Close your eyes and start to deepen your breath. And start to let that mind-body connection come through the breath, where you marry the sensation with the breath and the mind, and everything starts to see itself. And on the next in-breath, let's just take our arms out in a T, and let's go ahead and shrug them. So in our regular life, obviously we don't want to be sitting around with shrugged shoulders, but it's a really nice thing to shrug and feel the sides of your body getting long and feeling the waistline narrow. So you could even use the legs a little bit as if you're bringing up energy up the legs until you find that little bit of imprint around the spine. It's like you're trying to make yourself thinner from left to right until you feel a little sensation coming around the spine. Shrug one more time, side body long. And then relax those shoulders down the back. Inhale your arms up overhead. Interlace your fingers and let your hands rest on your crown. And just take a moment to really rest there as if the hands are just kind of hanging. So you're not pressing, but you're releasing the weight of the hands into the head. And then the head pushes back. It rebounds into that weight. And the sides of the throat gently pull back so that the neck is in line with the spine. And I want you to especially to see that the sternum, that nice long blade-like bone that goes through the center of your chest, that the lower portion of the sternum moves down and in. And so those ribs aren't just poking out, but they're softening down. It's almost like a little waterfall there of softness, which just allows you to breathe into the back body. And then once again, you just use from the base of your spine, you start to press up through your hands, feeling that length in the head. And then take the hands and just drape them, slip them down the back of the head until the heels of the hands hit the occiput. And you're just going to gently squeeze there and lift. The elbows come together, and then you squeeze around the whole forearm, squeeze around the skull, and you lengthen the neck down and forward. So instead of just thinking, I'm bringing my chin to the chest, think I'm trying to make myself look more like a swan. So there's this beautiful arch in the neck, as if you could create a little lifted space between each vertebra. A couple more breaths there. Again, you're not trying to jam the chin into the chest, but you're squeezing, lengthening, lifting. Last breath there. And then inhale, bring that head up. The elbows come out to the side, and you're just going to tilt to the left. Just tilt, and you're going to lift the right elbow up into the sky. And once again, feel the length. Like you can even shrug the shoulder here a little bit. See if you can root down with that sitting bone as best you can, so you have this opposite pull. And then think of that swan-like movement, like that you could even have that in your side body. And then release. Take a cleansing breath in the center. Let the head rest back into the hands. Inhale, the left elbow up into the sky as you tilt to the right. And then you're gonna lift that elbow up into the sky as you root that same side sitting bone down. And then you imagine, just like that swan action, that you could open up the spaces along that side of the body between the ribs. Inhale, shrug the shoulder and come up. Exhale, release the shoulders, release the hands, take a cleansing breath, and take a moment to feel the deepening of the breath and the results of that practice. Beautiful. Blink open your eyes. Here's where you grab your 2 blocks or other instruments, and you come onto your back. You're going to take the 1 block and you put it so that it's a flat side. Its biggest flat side is up and lengthwise. So it's like in the same length as your spine there. But then you place that between your shins. So your shins come up to meet it, and then they're going to squeeze that block and take it back down to the floor. And now your feet are on the floor and you squeeze the block, and you might notice that you get a little lumbar curve when you squeeze that block. So go ahead and squeeze it again and lift into that lumbar spine with your inhale. And as you exhale, don't lose the lumbar lift, but draw the lowest part of your belly in and up. Narrow the waistline like you're trying to squeeze around the spine. And imagine that that squeezing action from shin block up through crown helps to make your spine longer. It's like traction here. You're using your own body to create length. So you're squeezing the block, keeping the lumbar curve, pulling the low belly in and up, and hugging the waistlines as if you could bring them around the spine. And then breathing, as you're regularly breathing, you're bringing up that stretch up through the crown of the head. Shoulders are resting on the floor. Last breath. Good. And release the effort and just let your body rest for a moment. Take a cleansing breath. You're going to reach for the other block or prop, and you have your hands now, same kind of configuration, but now it's across the body, so it's not long ways, it's short ways, but it's still flat. And you're going to grab that block, squeeze it like you're trying to accordion it, and then lift your hands up into the sky. You'll notice that your shoulders come off the floor. And now I want you to plug those shoulders back in. So I want you to try to think of the arm bones like pistons, like there's no elbows bending. You're still squeezing the block, but you're pushing the arm bones down as if to make like pistons into the ground, like you're drilling for a deck or a what do you call those? I can't even think. The things that you walk out on in the, like in a little lake or something. It's called a dock. There you go, a dock. And now unplug, so you just feel the difference. So take your hands, squeezing that block, lift them up high till the shoulders come off the floor. And then without bending the elbows, start to pull them down and plug them in. So this is super important now, that the plugging in. And I want you to do the same kind of action with your legs. So you're going to squeeze that block, and as you feel the lumbar curve coming in, you might notice that that equals plugging for the thigh bones. So as soon as we flatten out the low back, the thigh bones jut forward, and this over time is not good for our thigh bones. We want to feel them rooting down like pistons into the earth along with those arms. Now you're going to keep all of that, the belly lifting, the waistline narrowing, and you're going to start to take your arms overhead, only so far as you can keep the sternum moving towards the pubis. And you just breathe here. And again, the waistline narrows, the low belly picks up, and you get traction through the spine. Last breath, because this is a lot of work. Good. Exhale as you bring the hands up, rest the block on your chest, and just take a breath. A pause. We've got one more action with this as we tuck into our practice and get really clear with our alignment. So we're going to grab that block up overhead, unplug the arms, and then plug them down. Keep that, squeeze the block between your shins, feel the uplift of your lumbar spine, and match that with lower sternum and lower belly drawing in together. Now you're going to come onto your tippy toes, and you're going to do the same thing. And notice with your tippy toes, you don't want to flatten the back to the floor, but you want everything hugging around that spine, the waistlines, the low belly, the sternum. And now you're going to see if you can pick those legs up off the floor, those toes up off the floor till your shins are parallel to the earth without changing any of that. So everything, and now you're going to touch the toes, tap the toes back down on the floor, and then again lifting them up. So sternum in, low belly in. It's core work, I know. Tap the toes down. If you want to add the arms, you start as you're tapping and untapping, your arms start migrating overhead, but you're trying to keep all that plug. And this is good mindful work. And you're trying not to let the lumbar spine take on any of the effort, that the low belly is supporting it in its curve. Last breath. And inhale, come up and relax the effort. Good. Take a moment to breathe. And take your blocks out to the side and just take your legs up into sky. And just notice here for a moment what your habit is. My habit is to let my low back just flatten on the floor and my thigh bones to migrate forward towards my face. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to try to feel that plugging in of the legs, the lower belly lifting, the side waist lengthening or drawing in, and the sternum dropping in. I'm going to take my arms up overhead, plug them in. And now everything's going to go out like a V. So the legs go out like a V, the hands go out like a V, and then once again we plug in. I really want you to feel that plug in. Now it's a tendency for the ribs to pop out, so while you're plugged in, you've got to work that core. One more breath. And as you exhale, bring everything together and just shake it out. We got one more of those, so rest first. Drop your feet to the floor, hands to the belly, cleansing breath. Second time, bring your legs up. Bring your arms up, plug in, support with sternum to low belly to sternum, waistline narrowing. Exhale, take yourself out into a V. And if you go slowly enough, you'll start to notice where you shift this, where you start to tuck under or lose the belly action. One more breath. And exhale back together. Release your feet to the floor. Oh wait, don't release your feet to the floor. Oh, shake it out. Good for lymph system. Good. You're going to drop your feet to the floor now and take your feet as wide as the sticky mat. Arms are out in T. As you inhale, you drop your knees to the left. Remember what we just did and incorporate that into your movement, into your practice. Exhale, draw the knees back up. Inhale, take them to the opposite side. Remember the work we just did, the narrowing around the waistline, the sternum dropping in, the breath full and steady. Exhale, come back to center. First side again. Inhale. Exhale. Last inhale. Exhale back to center. First or second side. Inhale. Exhale. There's the narrowing of the waistline, the low belly moving to sternum, sternum to low belly. And exhale, come back to center. Bring your knees up into your chest one at a time and start to turn them into opposing circles so they go wide back and apart. And you're just going to move into those hip joints gently, just getting them to get greased up. And go the other way. And notice that nice little lovely cat-cow that happens in the lumbar spine. Beautiful. Bring them back together. You're going to hug your left leg into the chest. And we'll stretch your right leg out till it's just hovering a few moments off the floor, a few inches off the floor. Can you imagine that you could bring energy up the inner legs to the inner spine and to the inner waistline so that you're hugging all the way around and supporting that lower spine? Last breath, can you drop in the sternum a little bit into this constellation of efforts? And then exhale, switch sides, bring your right knee in, your left leg hovers, and as you hug and stretch, you start to bring energy up the inner legs, to the inner thighs, to the inner spine, to the inner waistlines. And you breathe, stretching the body. And exhale, bring the right knee into the, or left knee into the chest, both knees in, curl and hug. See if you can bring forehead to knees. Last breath here. Okay, here's another fun one. One more little core exercise that's also really good for your triceps. Your hands are down by your hips and they're palm face down. Now you can also do this with your hands underneath your hips. So if you're a little more tender or not sure about this, that's a good place to start. You're bending your knees, your toes are tapping. Inhale. As you exhale, you press your belly down in the back. Your legs come up and you try to get them off the floor like a half an inch. You inhale, tap down. Exhale, it's like a ha. Lift. Inhale, down. Exhale, strong low belly. Lift the legs up. Inhale. We got 3 more. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Last one. Exhale. And come on down. Feet to the floor. Take a cleansing breath. Roll to your side. When you're on your side, you'll just walk yourself up, but you'll keep your leg, your thigh bone, so that it's parallel to the short edge of your mat. And your right leg, your opposite leg, is just kind of tucked behind. You're going to walk gently, and here you can use blocks if you're super tight, but you're going to have those blocks parallel to the thigh bone. So there's just, there's 2 straight lines there. And then you just walk your hands or your forearms, depending what your ability is. And then you imagine that you're pulling up through those inner thighs to the inner waistline. So you feel really supported there. The sternum drops to the belly drops to the sternum, and you just extend through the crown. Extend through the tail. Find the lengthening, the tractioning, the gentle twisting of the spine. And you breathe. And I'm just going to go over the alignment actions one more time. So from the big toe mound, so from the inner foot, we draw up through the inner knee, inner thighs. Keep going inner until you squeeze. You can find the waistlines narrowing around the spine. Once you get there, you see if you can reach through the crown and the tail simultaneously. One more breath. Relax the shoulders out. Bring the sides of the throat slightly up. Last breath. Beautiful, and gently release. You can come back through center. So it's like Vajrasana. You're coming up onto your shins. Take a pause there. Take a breath there, and then we move to second side. So I'm going to rock out onto my opposite hip. For me, it's my right hip. My other leg is just gently tucked behind me, and then I either take the blocks or not blocks, and I take my hands so that they're parallel, that there's straight line between the thigh bone and the heels of my hands. And then I can walk down onto forearms if that makes sense for me. So you just take, and you make sense for yourself. As you get there, bring the energy up the inner legs to the inner thighs, to the inner waistline, hugging around there. See if you can extend through crown and tail simultaneously. And big deep breath, and you're just here for a few more breaths as you work to find that hugging action around the spine. The sides of the throat lift up, the shoulders relax apart. And close your eyes if you can get a better internal view. If not, keep them open. Last breath, squeeze and extend. It's like squeezing the base of a tube of toothpaste. Good, and then release. Gently coming on back to center. Come for a moment onto your knees, hands in your lap. Take a cleansing breath. We move from here. I'm going to turn on my mat, so I'm facing the short end of my mat. I'm going to start with a little footwork. So I'm going to tuck my toes under, and so that I'm stretching the bottoms of the feet. If this is too much for you, here's some variations. You can just be in tabletop with your toes tucked under, if that's enough, and then you can kind of ease yourself back and notice where enough is enough for you. And take that, one more breath there. Inhale, your arms flying up overhead. Exhale, release them down. Okay, you're untucking. This time, left foot untucks on the floor. The top of the right foot, so where the arch is the biggest, rests into the arch of the bottom foot, and we sit back again. And we just get a nice little massage with the bony top of the top foot into the arch of the bottom foot. Just sit back for another breath. Just stretching out the front of the ankle and the arch. Good. And then come on up to hands and knees. We're going to switch, so we'll take the right foot, untuck it on the floor. The top of the arch of the left foot rests into the arch of the right foot, and you just sit on back, and you just give yourself a little foot stretch. Good to get those feet awake and enthusiastic for our practice. Okay, and we're going to come up and we're going to turn our hands backwards if we can. If we can't, we turn them straight out to the sides. You just go with what you can. You soften the elbows, tuck the toes, shrug the shoulders, squeeze the waistline, and start to take cow tilt. And then exhale and take cat tilt. A little harder with the arms like this, but you're going to get a monster stretch for your inner wrist. And then release that out. Sit on back one more time and just squeeze and open the hands. I call this sparkling. Sparkle, sparkle. We need lots of sparkle. All right, take your hands down on the floor. Look up like you're doing a cow tilt and look back or step back into downward facing dog. Remember that action up the legs, so from the inner part of the foot, like mound of the big toe, up the inner ankle, inner shins, inner knees, inner thighs, inner legs. Can you plug the thigh bones into their socket and slightly back? So you have to soften the knees and pull them back. And then you're going to do the same thing with your hands. So you're going to look up at your hands and then try to plug those arm bones into their sockets and lift them slightly away from the hips or from the thigh bones, so that we're moving in two directions. The low belly lifts up, the waistline narrows, and we stretch. Beautiful. Drop your knees to the floor. Swing your right leg through to the best of your ability, even if you have to grab it with your hand. And you're just going to very gently rock it forward and back. Don't worry if you're getting you know, the perfect stretches, especially as we go back into runner's lunge. Just be easy with yourself. You're just massaging out the stiffness. Breathing deeply. Beautiful. The last one, you're going to reach back and lift the toes up. Again, if you're super tight, blocks are super handy here. And then you're going to go left and you're going to go right. So it's just like a swing, like you're trying to swing into the left hip and swing into the right hip. Beautiful. Bend that front knee. Plant your hands down on the floor. Lift the back leg up as high as you can. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then drop it down. Turn yourself, your whole self, towards the long edge of the mat. So you're going to come up on the straight legs. And then you just bow forward. Prasarita Padottanasana. Take a breath there. And breathe into the widening of the hips. Gently stretching, never grinding into the hip joints. So you want to make sure there's kind of a lift from the legs up around that waistline, so you're not just hanging on the joints. Good. And then walk yourself to the other side. So we're going to come to the other facing and the other lunging. And when we get there, the back knee goes to the floor. Take a breath there. And as you exhale, you just start to move gently back and forth, just like you're getting a little massage. You're getting into the fronts of the hips where we've got lots of immune system glands. A couple more. Pump in the body is one of the best things we can do for immunity. You're going to come back this time, lift your toes so you're on your front heel. Grab blocks if you're a little tighter. Make sure that back thigh is vertical and then start to swing left and right. It's like swinging into the one hip and swinging into the other. This tends to line up all the hamstring fibers and get them stretched. Coming back to center. Just stretch that leg, inhaling, lengthening, exhaling, foot back down, knee bends. You're going to walk your hands to the right, find your way up to Prasarita Padottanasana, and bow deeply. Inhale, sweep your arms behind the back and interlace the hands as you stretch them overhead. And breathe. One more breath. All right, release those hands. You're going to come up halfway, and then you walk over towards the right foot, and my right shoulder is just kind of gracing the inside of the knee as best it can. And then I'm going to push from that left hip, left thigh, all the way down through the left foot. And then I'm coming over to the right, and I just realized I'm not mirroring you. So my right shoulder is on my right leg. You can either ignore me and join me or do it the same way I'm saying. And then you're going to press from that right hip down through that right foot to come back to first side again. And we just do that a couple more times, just stretching and feeling how that leg, how the thigh can really govern the action of the leg, or how the booty actually can govern the action. So other side again, and you reach from that booty, presses down through that leg, come back to center, just kind of mashed potato your feet in a little bit, take your elbows onto your knees, bend your knees right out over the second toe, and now just do a little side to side movement right through those groins, and breathing. Okay, now we're going to replace those elbows with our hands and come up. Take a cleansing breath. And you can roll the shoulders here. Good. We'll sweep the arms up overhead. And you're just going to pause here for a moment and remember the very first thing we did. So I want you to feel that you've got a lumbar curve. If you need to bring your feet in, I just realized mine are a little wide and I want them parallel to each other. So readjust there. And then as your arms reach overhead, bring that energy up through your inner legs to your inner waistline. Try not to shove the hips forward. Let them hang back. Let those thigh bones hang back. But bring the sternum into your belly and the belly up to meet the sternum. Begin to reach with those arms, and then take your right arm down by your side and just a long diagonal through the left side. And imagine that swan action again, where it's like you're opening up each rib on that side. Root down to inhale, come up. Let that hand float up to meet the other, and then the other one comes down. And we start to reach through the right side. Just finding the abdominal support to open up those spaces of the side ribs. Inhale, come up. Take a cleansing breath, exhaling. We turn the feet out again, and we bring the hands to the knees. The knees migrate right over the second toes. Now, my right shoulder is going to start to move in and try to touch my left knee. My left knee is not going to try to move towards the right shoulder. And then I come up, and I take my left shoulder, and I move it towards my right knee. And I'm stretching through the side using my abdominals. And then inhale, come up. One more time each side. And I always find this is interesting because one side I barely feel at all. And the other side, here we go, second side. The other side, it's like a big pull. Beautiful. Come on up to center. Turn your feet face forward in cleansing breath. Good. Now we're going to keep the left foot the way it is. The right foot's going to turn out. So the heel bisects the arch of the left foot. And I'm going to mash potato that left leg a little farther away because I'm going to move into warrior two. And I'm just going to do this with hands on the hips and just pumping. So I'm just going to pump, and you'll notice that I want that knee right over second and third toes. I want to feel the weight in the heel, and I can press through that heel to come up, working on leg strength, movement, stretch through the hips, strengthening those connections there. You want to still get that feeling like you're plugging in. Couple more. We're going to stay in warrior two position, but then let your left hand drape down the left leg and the right hand come up overhead. It looks a little bit like goddess warrior. One more breath. Notice that front knee if you need to peek at it for a moment and make sure it's over the second and third toes, and then come on back and then press through that heel. Come on up, take a cleansing breath. You can roll and squeeze the shoulders, turn that right leg in, take a breath again, turn the left leg out, and we'll continue that same thing, hands on the hips, inhale. As you exhale, you bend into a square, and you're really feeling the weight on the heel of your foot. And you're transferring that knee weight right over the second and third toe. And you're breathing and just feeling the strengthening and the stretching. I like to note that the back foot is still strong and engaged. It's not gone to sleep. It's still a part of the pose, so it's getting a nice stretch as well. One more. And then we're going to bend into that knee. Let the right arm drape down and the left arm come up overhead. And if you need to peek at that front knee and make sure it's in alignment, do so. And then breathe up through that side, opening hips and waistline. Beautiful. Press down and come on up. Turn both feet in, hands to your hips. Inhale, lift your heart. Exhale, dive forward, Prasarita, Padottanasana. Hanging over those strong but soft legs. So that means you can still feel your feet on the floor. The heels and the balls of the feet, the knees are soft. And you're breathing. One more breath. This works as an inversion, so really appreciate that, how all the flow is going down towards your crown. Now we'll reverse that by pressing up halfway like a flat back. And then as best we can, you just come on in and come on down to Vajrasana. And take a moment and take a cleansing breath. Okay, we're gonna rock out onto our right thigh again, a little bit like how we began. But this time, you're going to have your hands to the sides and you just kind of lift up until you can find that the sitting bones, they're never gonna be equidistant from the floor, but you want them to get a little closer to that. And then you're gonna take your left hand across to the to the right knee, left hand to the right knee, and you'll just gently twist over, looking at the hand that might be on the foot back there. And then you use those inner legs to lift up into inner thighs and to feel that waistline squeeze as you look over your right shoulder. Another couple breaths there. Just feeling a really safe, gentle twist. Beautiful. Come on to center. You're going to rock out onto your other hip. Take a moment there to set yourself up until you get those hips fairly settled. Take the right hand over to the left knee. The other hand can be resting in your feet, and you're not just jamming yourself into a twist, more you're finding the inner body lift that makes you longer. It's like squeezing a toothpaste from the very bottom of the tube. And it's always easier to squeeze on the leg now in this pose that you're moving towards. So the other leg that you're moving away from is going to have to work a little harder. Then you just breathe and lengthen. Feel the chest lifting, feel that strong channel of energy. Beautiful. And gently release. We're going to take our knees up. We're going to do one Navasana and move from there right into some hip stretches. So have tippy toes on the floor and remember your block. In fact, you could even put one there if that felt good to you. And you just squeeze that block, but make sure you're not hanging down on your spine. So as you squeeze the block, it makes the lumbar lift. And then the lower sternum drops in. And I can notice sometimes that this is enough with my feet on the floor, that I'm working deeply inside to get some really deep stretch and strength. If I want to try, I can lean back and squeeze that block and lift it. Navasana. But you want to have that lower spine feel supported and lift, and the lower sternum dropping in and down. Last breath. From here, we remove the block, cross the right ankle over the left. I like to keep the block here, and then I karate chop my feet down on the floor and just hinge forward. And if this doesn't hurt my knees, I can keep going, or I can also just make a little platform here for my head and my hands. And just breathe deeply. So we don't always have to go into the extreme stretch of the pose, but we can feel where we just get enough stretch that we can rest and breathe. And you let the body's tensions unravel instead of trying to force them to open. Let's take 3 more breaths here. Think of the breath like turning the thighs inward and apart, like you're stretching and creating space around the back. You want to breathe into the back body almost as if you could breathe down from the back to the pelvic floor. Beautiful. And gently press down through your legs to lift up. Root to rise. Here we go. Second time. Moving between strength and flexibility. If you want, you can place that block between your shins, or just remember it. Tippy toes stay on the floor. We squeeze the block to get that uplift on the lumbar spine. We bring the sternum in, and either you just stay there and enjoy the work of that pose, or you try to squeeze that block and lift your shins till they're parallel to the floor. And you breathe. And you see if you can plug in. So that would mean the arms and the legs. One more breath. And then you remove that block. Left ankle over right. Karate chop the feet on the floor. Keep your block or your prop with you. And then just hinge at the hips. When you get to your first resistance place, try to pause there and then use the action. Squeeze from the inner legs all the way around that waistline. And see if that brings you a little more stretch. I often find that one hip is a little easier than the other. You can karate chop those feet down and bring that energy up the inner thighs again. Try to narrow the waistlines and use your abdominals to support the lengthening of the spine. 2 more breaths here. Beautiful. And root to rise. You're going to keep your block or your prop and come all the way onto your back and bring the prop underneath your hips so that you feel really supported. It's not on the lumbar spine. It's right on that flat panel there of the back of the hips. And you reach down and see if you can kind of tickle your heels. Take a cleansing breath there. Relax shoulders. See if you can get a little plug in. And if you notice as you start to plug in, that creates that little uplift in the lumbar spine. Remember, that's not the whole story. That's the first part of that's the first chapter. The second chapter is where we bring sternum to pubis, pubis to sternum. We narrow the waistlines and feel that lengthening of the spine. Now you're welcome to stay here if this is enough, or you can press down into your feet, roll the shoulders underneath you, and just feel the opening of front body. We're going to be here for about 5 to 10 breaths, depending on what you can do. I like to have my hands touching my heels, and it's like I'm trying to pull the heels back towards the booty, and I'm just opening that whole front side of the body. It's an extreme, it's not an extreme back bend, it's actually a minor back bend, but over time I find that this really opens the thighs, which when the thighs, the front of the thighs are open, it helps to stretch the psoas. And you just keep trying to plug in as best you can so you don't migrate those thigh bones up to the front of the socket. Let's go for 3 more breaths. Last breath. Beautiful. See if you can release those hips back on the block and just rest everything out. You can even take your legs straight here, feet or toes pointed to the sky, if that's not too much for you for a front body stretch. If it is, you have a couple choices. You can bend the knees, or you can bring that action up inner thighs and see if you can pull around the back. You can also try taking your arms up overhead, but the same thing is you want to have that plug in. So that's a little different than just relaxing and reaching the arms out. So they get used to being really plugged into their sockets. And you're getting a nice long stretch through the whole front body. 1 more breath here. Beautiful. Release out of that. Bend your knees one at a time. You're going to move right into shavasana. And take a moment to set yourself up so that your feet are falling out to the side. Your palms are face up. The hips and shoulders are relaxing down to the floor. And you just give over to gravity and the support of the earth underneath you. Like really feel it, rest into it, and let yourself go as best you can. You can stay here as long as you'd like. This is your practice. Enjoy the rest. Enjoy the benefits of your yoga. I will see you next time. Namaste. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Namaste.